I want to talk about a little bit about crime and safety. You have an extensive background in police work.
Yes.
State attorneys here in the state line have struggled with the Safety Act and their detention rules. As a former officer, and I want you to, if you can get a little bit specific,
Okay.
how is this law fixable through amendments, or would you get to Springfield and vote to repeal it completely, even on losing the terms of accountability that the Safety Act does bring, like body-worn cameras for police officers and other aspects of accountability that it can bring? How would you approach the Safety Act in Springfield?
Okay. First of all, it needs to totally be repealed and it needs to be redone. Okay. We were doing cameras and videos before this act even happened, and it was just a part of the changing times. The the electronic stuff was really starting to come in, and I think it was of a greater demand. And it was more beneficial for officers because of a lot of false allegations that were coming in. And also it helped with accountability. I'm all for that. A lot of officers are. Because when we have to go and fight for ourselves, for the job that we do, there's nothing to back that up except your statement. And that's all that there ever was. And it's hard because it's your word against their word. And so this really was a tremendous asset for officers to have. And I think it's great. Unfortunately, a lot of that act really takes away from an officer being able to do their job properly. And I think a lot of things have to be redone. First of all, we're not going to defund the police. That is the number one most idiotic thing that any community could ever think about doing, because you're opening up the door for anyone who wants to commit a crime now. You're literally saying, hey, you know what, don't worry about the cameras, we don't need that anymore. Let me open up my front door, come on and take whatever you want. Right now, the police officers' hands are being tied. Where things used to be a misdemeanor and we would arrest someone, now they're writing a citation and going, here, show up in court, and they walk away. So one of the things is somebody's on your property, they jump in your pool. And this is kind of like how the American people are saying this, is that, okay, the officer shows up and says, you know what, you need to get out of the pool, let's go. And they're like, no, I'm not leaving, because now they have this act. And they have downgraded crime so much that the officer says, okay, here's your citation, show up in court, turns around and leaves, and now these owners, what do they do with it? So it's frustrating all the way around, and the American people are really getting fed up with this. Also, we need more police. We need more police. You know, when I came on 40 years ago, because we got the time that I'm retired now, it was a long time ago, 87, in the middle of the 80s, we had beat officers. And a beat car couldn't turn a corner without seeing that beat officer walking. And I'll tell you what, that made a world of difference. Why? Because it humanized us. Because that beat officer was talking to your residents. They were holding hands, taking children to school with their parents. The children looked up to officers. Officers were in businesses, in and out all day long for an entire shift.
Let me ask you, Victoria, because this is a big issue.
Yeah.
On just police departments being stretched thin, recruitment's low. I was even planning on asking you this, but you're harking on it. What would be a solution? Because it's hard. Our local police station. I mean, you live in a rural county. Sometimes these police departments struggle to recruit. They have to compete with bigger departments, even the Chicago PD, and better incentives and benefits. What is something that you would introduce in Springfield to actually make maybe some of the rural police departments a little bit more competitive? What kind of what can Springfield do or the state do in order to help recruitment? I believe a lot of police chiefs would agree with you that they want more, officers and recruits into their offices, but sometimes it's a little hard to translate that. How would you approach that?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I will tell you what, we have towns and counties that do not have police officers, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. One of them mostly is money, okay? And I think no town should ever go without a police presence, because again, that opens up the door for crime. And there's no way to protect the people. And so not having a police officer in any given town in this state is absolutely horrible. I think what needs to happen is that a lot of chiefs have their hands tied because they don't have the funds. I think that, and it's not just the funds for hiring an officer, it's the funds for the police car, it's the funds for their gears. As of 2025, it's mandatory to have, the cameras and the videos in the cars and whatever other equipment comes along with that. You got maintenance of these vehicles. You've got, a lot of things. You've got a pension that would come with this officer. And you know what? Everybody who works for a living deserves to have a pension. People are talking about, oh, you've got a great pension, this and that. Well, let me tell you something. Chicago police officers, when we retire, we don't get 100% pension. We get 75%. And because I didn't make it to 29 years and I left at 25 years, I left with 65% of my pay. So there's a lot of things that are not clear to the people.
So I'm hearing more money for Springfield to
Absolutely.
maybe help out these departments, inject them maybe with a little bit more funding from maybe the state level?
I think so. And I think what we need to do is to separate. We need to find a way to do like a surplus. We need to separate those funds to do just primarily that. And that should not be touched by anything else, whether it comes from your tolls or a lot of things are coming out of people's property taxes, and I think that taxation is off the charts, and it's not being divided to the proper avenues for everything that it needs to cover. And I think this is where we're running into problems. There are so many different entities of taxes coming in from the state that it needs to be in a separate individual account and never touched for anything but that. And I think that the chiefs in many of these towns should not have to be forced to file grants to get permission to have officers. Also, I think it should be mandatory, and the money should be there for any area to have more than one officer, not just one. You can't expect an officer to work 24 hours and be fresh and be clear-headed and be able to fight and to be able to, and he needs backup. A lot of these towns are relying on county. County could be up to 45 minutes away before they can even respond to a serious situation. And so, yes, we need the monies. We need the monies desperately for that. And the people need to see the monies that they're paying into the taxes go directly to that.